work around the Fukushima catastrophe. An artist from California who was trying to protect the atmosphere by getting enough countries to make it a UNESCO site. And of course, I wrote all the letters with her. We wrote the letters. We had an army of people writing letters to governments. We got about 5 governments interested. Interestingly, Togo, for example, was the first to say yes, but it failed. It was a failed project. So we were unable to list the Earth's atmosphere. Other things done that might relate to some of the questions were the compost heap of Songdong, which became, after some time, the do-nothing garden. This is the do-nothing garden in Documenta. So another project had to do with composting and was Claire Pentecost's work. That's Claire. And with Witzenhausen University, we worked on the ingots of earth. And then there were many, many, many other things. But I did want to spend a moment. Maria Teresa Alves' work around a lake that had been dried in Mexico illegally. There were many projects. But I think that we just skipped to the end here. There was also, I think one of the most important projects in the Documenta was the least reviewed by humans. And it was a garden made for the butterflies. So the audience actually of Christina Buch was the butterflies. And she's trained as a scientist and as a in theology and in entomology, actually. And so her garden was very, very not attractive to human visitors, but it happened to have a very interesting balance of plants and flowers that would be interesting to other audiences. So the actual Documenta had many audiences. It wasn't only the art world. And then, of course, there was Pierre Huyg's compost. I would call it a compost. It was called Untilled, and it composted together remnants of human culture and elements of non-human culture. And I find that this copy of a 1950s German sculpture withdrawn from the gaze of the audience and hidden from being consumed through also an alliance with the bees was one of the most poignant results of our discussions, and I think one of the most interesting symbols of what we were trying to do with that project. So, then I was going to talk to you about the wonderful architecture of non-humans, which I then taught. After the Documenta, I was teaching for a few years at the Goethe University in Frankfurt on the invitation of Christoph Menke. And we had bees in the philosophy department, and we were looking at, we were working together. And many different people from all over came and participated in our seminars, including la bonne Vincienne Després, who at the time was doing research. Look, when we enslaved what we did. And then, so I wanted to talk to you about all that, including fashion. Wait, here's the fashion picture. But I didn't manage. Of course, you can't avoid the bowerbirds when you talk about aesthetics and desire and sensuality and pleasure and play in the non-human world. But we can't. So then there was Saltwater, the Istanbul Biennale, which I suppose it had to do with how we were 2 years later. And it had to do both with moving off the land, living the land, but it also had to do with actually salt and the incredible powers of salt water in terms of the digital age. Because if you drop your cell phone in normal sweet water, it will dry and work. But if you drop it in salt water, it will break, 100%, because of the attractions between the different ions of the different molecules. So it's interesting how fragile, in fact, the digital world is, which may be one of the reasons why, because of this fragility, because of this incredible fragility, there is a need to, on the part of power, let's say, to clean it up and to avoid the salt water and to avoid the mud and to avoid anything that might break down this apparent power. So on this note, I did want to show you a series of drawings that Anna Bogigian recently made in Torino about the story of Nietzsche, who in a similar moment as our own, but the Industrial Revolution in the late, actually the revolution, the advanced industrial, the revolution that seeing the invisible like X-rays and communications with photography and so on that time. So his skepticism and engagement with that revolution is interestingly related to the skepticism and the engagement with the digital revolution that some intellectuals have today. And the connection is always the Dionysiac. So at least in European culture, one always ends up going to Dionysus and to the Dionysiac and the Bacchanale and the wine and so forth in order to somehow relieve the tension or open up a space within which to think and to explore outside of that binary. So Nietzsche, of course, was in Torino and saw the horse being beaten. I'm almost finished, don't worry. The horse being beaten. And he embraced the horse. He said, "Stop, stop." And the policeman beat the man and the horse. And Lou Salome looms in the background. Lou Salome is perhaps the model, actually, for the superhuman. I think her life and thinkings might be the model. And he's arrested, and then he's locked up, and he says, "But we must lock up the emperor instead, the Austro-Hungarian emperor, and the Pope." But they didn't listen. So he went off into the Dionysiac, and at the end of his life, he was interested in the mating of eagles. And I'm going to just read you a few lines of the text that she wrote in these drawings. And I will skip the depressing end of the talk, which was about the mother hating, which is what I believe lies at the core of part of the problems of today. And I will instead read you the words on Nietzsche that Anna Bogigian wrote a few months ago when she made these drawings. Nietzsche was not old when one day, while walking the piazza, he saw a horse being beaten badly by a horseman. It was so badly beaten, the horse fell on the floor. Nietzsche ran to rescue the horse. He fell as he assisted, cried. The police arrived and led him to the police station on Po Street. Eventually, he returned to his room, where he stripped naked and went into frenzy, into a dance of Dionysian nature. He proclaimed that he was Jesus on the cross, and he took over his kingdom by putting the Pope into prison and the Kaiser of Germany. The landlady heard the sound of his room, called his mother, who took him to a sanatorium, and then home, that where he died. His sister Elizabeth took care of him. It is possible that his catatonic state was a way to reign the world. He played and composed music during these years. Before he died, he was obsessed with eagles, mating, lambs. Possibly he was the lamb. That's it.